Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Crew Call Live. Thank you for joining me. This is my conversation with sports broadcast and industry technicians, entertainment, sports, anybody that I can find in the industry that's willing to share their knowledge. And I'm so happy today to be joined by somebody who is also so willing to share their knowledge because he does one of these jobs that I find is so difficult to do. I've always admired a lot of people in this industry and a lot of different shares that people work in and work on. So very uh it's very always I always wanted to show all the different crafts and all the different positions and a lot of what they do and how they do it and the journeys that they take along the way to get to where they're going in this industry and in their careers. And so I'm joined today by Paul Harvath, and he is a technical director. He sits in that chair, pushes all the buttons, and basically makes sure that what you see when you're turning on any broadcast or stream or whatever we want to call it now, you're seeing what the director is saying. And to do what he does, I mean, must have a huge learning curve. So let me first introduce Paul Harvath. Paul, you with me today?
I am. How's it going?
Hey, buddy, how are you? Thanks for joining me. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate your time and taking time out. So, a little bit about you would be great. So, you started. Obviously, you don't start as a technical director. It's a chair or a position you probably aspire to. But where I want to start is, um, you're a legacy guy. Your dad is in the industry. And why I think we see so many people in this industry that are legacy guys, it's because of exposure. You get exposed to the industry. When you see yourself doing something or you see somebody doing something in an industry that's enjoying what they're doing or is getting fulfillment, and you see that it opens a door for you and opens your mind to it. You might not want to do what you see that you're exposed to, but you might see while you're exposed other positions because I know your dad. I've worked more with your dad than I've worked with you, but you've had an incredible career as your dad has well. But your dad does a different job than you do. So let's start with that. Your beginning. Where did you get your path to the craft, and you start to get to where you're at?
My dad actually tried really hard to keep me out of television. I mean, very hard. I got out of college. I have a degree in film and media arts and had no job prospects. So my dad said, "Why don't you move back home? I You could try to be a camera guy, but it will take you forever to break in because everybody wants to be a camera guy, and a lot of those positions are already filled, but nobody wants to be a TD. So if you want to work and you want to start working right away, the clearest path for you is going to be as a TD because nobody else will do it." And so Brian Holder, a TD in St. Louis, was very gracious, and he spent 6 months with me. And I would just come and I would sit with him and he would show me stuff, and then I would watch him do the show. And then after about 6 months, I got a phone call that the technical director that they were flying into St. Louis to do a game couldn't make it. So it was going to be me or nobody. So it might as well be me. And that first show, I messed up really, really badly. And the next few shows, I messed up really, really badly. And it was about a year of getting some shows and figuring some stuff out. After about a year of going through that and just suffering through shows, every day I went into work, a lot of it finally started to click and make sense. And I felt like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to completely destroy this show today. Maybe I'll get through it and it'll be pretty clean. But part of what got me through that first year is just being able to suffer through that and get back up the next day and show up back at work.
Well, I find that very interesting because a lot of people don't understand that sometimes the path to being successful is sometimes through a lot of failure, and it's hard to believe that it's the truth. But what is failure? Failure is making mistakes but learning from them. That's the key to that. Like there are mistakes that you can make in this industry that are allowable, and but when you make those mistakes too often, then it becomes for different reasons. It's one thing when you make a mistake because you don't know it's done that way or you didn't know. But once you kind of know, then those mistakes become less. But that's interesting that it took you a lot. Do you remember, like, obviously, we're talking, it took you, you've had a career now. And so that was a while ago. What was that first technology that you learned? What was the first switcher you learned on?
So I would call before every show because I was terrified. I was starting to learn Grass Valley switchers and I was terrified that I would show up and there'd be a Sony switcher there. But I started on like 3,000, 4,000. So the first switcher I was really switching on was still analog. It wasn't even digital switcher. So I learned on the 3,000, 4,000, and then the Calypso, a couple other things, like a kayak, which was a company that Grass Valley ended up buying out. But it's really only been those three switchers because the 3,000, 4,000 was basically one switcher, just one was analog and one was digital. Then the Calypso, and now like the K frame, X frame, all of those are essentially the same switcher. So it's really in how long has it been? Since 2007. So what is that? 18 years? 18 years has really only been three switchers. And it's really only been two because the 3,000, 4,000 was on the way out when I started. So it's really just been two switchers.
Now, so you learned by having a mentor who helped you first get that learning. But then, so when you were doing those transitions from the next generation to that, did you take a class? Did you ever, or did you look for resources online? How did you prepare yourself for these upgrades? Because sometimes you're not unaware, right? All of a sudden, you know you're going to show up in a new truck and they're going to be that way, right?
You know they're going to be that way. I tried very early. I tried printing out an entire switcher manual so that I could read it.
How many pages is that?
I had to go to Kinko's. It was like 25 bucks to get it printed out. It was like a whole book. And I made it 10% of the way through. I don't think I would work in television if I could sit down and read something and learn from it. I'd probably end up being a lawyer. Um, but you pick up some terms through the manual, but a lot of this is, I mean, your failure is correct. You're going to fail a lot and you're going to learn a lot doing that. But a lot of it is hands-on learning that you can't get from a book or just reading the manual and knowing, oh, when I push this button, this is going to have a lot of this job is knowing when not to do the thing you're told. And that's where you find the greatest success.
So, all right. So we're talking about the technical director, and part of that job is learning the switcher. And like you've had to learn a bunch of different switchers, but that's not the whole thing. It's not just pushing the buttons. So you have to work with the directors, right? So you've had a different work with a lot of different directors. I mean, on you now you're at the level where you probably work with a select few because you're on the bigger shows. But how was it when you were working with so many different guys, different workflows, preparing for those type of shows? Because I feel like that's probably the harder workflow to get used to, is the regular working TD than the guy who's doing the bigger shows. Because that's a regular bigger show. You get used to, almost you get used to that, I guess, at some point.
You do. And I think I did a lot of the away shows in St. Louis, and it was great because every 3 or 4 days during baseball, a new director would come in and you'd be doing different things and they would be calling things different ways, and you learned a lot really quickly. And I think the important thing going through that is figuring out which ones are the ones worth learning something from and which ones are the ones that you kind of like, oh, I'm not going to do things the way that they're doing things because that's not a great idea. And I also got really lucky because technical directors sometimes move on to become directors if they grow up. So
Wait, so
I got
you're not ready to grow up yet?
I, some of them that came through like Mitch Riggin and Jonathan Evans and Dustin Denty had been through it on the TD side. And one, they were really patient with you because they had the same experience you had. Like they had to go mess up a bunch of shows and they've had to sit next to directors who are getting mad and frustrated because things aren't going the way they want. And they were real patient and they would mentor you. They'd be like, if you were interested in learning, they were interested in spending half an hour, 45 minutes during the setup, going over stuff and explaining stuff and why they do things that way. And when they were a TD, what worked for them and what didn't work for them. So finding people like that is really important. If they're willing to teach and you're willing to learn, they will help you out immensely.
Well, I think a lot of that goes to the point of that fact that it's a collaborative work environment. We're all working together, and it's in the director's best interest to help the person next to him. And it's actually in everybody's best interest to help the person next to him on any show you work on. I mean, that's rule one. I mean, you want to just kind of, well, rule one is don't shoot any camera guys, but rule two should be help everybody else on the show if you can. And, like that is what you want to be, of service, helpful. You want to be helpful to other people on the crew and on the show. Like as a technical director on the show, and now you're working some big shows, you also become kind of like the pseudo department head because you end up being the like for people who are interested in learning more about how sports production works and all the jobs associated with it, you're working on a truck. You're not working in a facility for, like sometimes I know you do a lot of sometimes some studio shows that you may do work in a facility, but most of the time you're in a mobile unit, a big truck. And now when you're talking about these big shows, you've worked World Series and Stanley Cup playoffs. These are multiple mobile units. And then so you have to make sure that all these interconnects work. You have different sources going everywhere. Then you could be going at, for baseball that you're going to be doing the World Series. You can be going from, vent site to site with a lot of the stuff, and some of the stuff is always being added on. How is that difficult to manage all the logistical stuff? Because you're the guy in charge of what we call facts, right? You designate fax time, and like let's go into what is a big fax.
Big facts is making sure everything works. And you can't make sure everything is working if you don't know what you have and how much of everything. I mean, I spent a lot of time making up a checklist that includes all of the cameras on the show. It includes all of the tape on the show, all of transmission. Because when you fax a camera, there are multiple parts of it, and you end up dealing with every department. I got to deal with audio to make sure the camera guys are hearing what they're supposed to be hearing. I got to deal with tape to make sure that the high frame rate cameras are playing back correctly. I try to make sure every source in the switcher goes to program at least one time before we go to air. I want to see it. I want to see it in program, make sure the graphics are right, make sure tape looks right. I mean, now we're talking about HDR and SDR. So now you got two color spaces that you're dealing with, making sure that all of your sources are HDR so they can be down converted back to SDR correctly. Like it's a ton of stuff, and it's really tedious and awful and boring, but you got to make sure that you know everything that's supposed to be on the show, because there's no worse feeling than having a director ask you to do something in the middle of the show and realizing that you don't have it and you can't take it to air.
So you mentioned you have a list. So like that means being prepared for the show. So what, like obviously like I'm used to, we all get a production memo, right? Which has a lot of like, these production memos obviously for the big show have everything that associated with the production, the booth layout, the trucks that you're going to have, who the EICs are on the truck, who the rest of the entire crew list, all the other specs and everything else. So that you're kind of working a lot off of that. But then you're taking that document and taking out the material that's in there that's pertinent to what your job is to build your kind of things. So you build your little checklist to go over to make sure that you follow through. Do you alter that? Do you build um, stencils for that to make sure that it makes it more efficient? Are there other tricks or tips that you have to make it more efficient to set up or fax and do all the stuff you have to do?
I try to take all the information directly from the tech book, and on Google Docs, it's great. I can just import the camera page to my own spreadsheet, and then I create a checklist that'll have what I deem to be the most important parts of the camera for the fax. So I create check boxes for like tallies, returns, if this camera is a high frame rate, if this camera has monitors next to it that I'll need checked. If this is a handheld and has multiple drops, if it's an RF, if it's a robo, if it's just a POV. I don't keep track of like where it's coming from per se, other than say like, oh, this is a feed from MLB, so that if there's an issue, it's easier to track down. Um, and then I go through and when an item is checked off, it turns a different color. So I can look at my sheet and see I should have an entire Google sheet filled with green lines. If everything's green, it means it's good to go. If I'm seeing white or blue, I can just quickly look and see like, oh, there are two things that I haven't faxed yet. And then I know, all right, I got to track these down. And then I can check before I go to air. Yep, everything's green. I've run all of these sources through the switcher. I've looked at all of these in program, and they're all good to go. I can take these to air without having to think about it or worry about it.
Now, so like the big shows coming up, let's talk about the World Series a little bit because I'm, I've been lucky enough to only work a few. I worked a couple of them when they were in that golden age of the '90s when the Yankees had their streak. But I
Mhm.
wasn't one of the main cameras. I mean, I was lucky enough to. I was thrilled. It was earlier on in my career, and I was a Fox handheld for the celebration in the um Diamondbacks dugout, so clubhouse. So I ended up in a celebration that wasn't particularly good for a Yankee fan to be a part of, but I was happy to have the gig and the exposure because that was early for me to see how a big show works. And Fox has had the contract for a long time. And the days when I did it was Bill Webb directing, and now you're working with Gangle, right? Who's out of um, Minnesota, right? Is that where
And
is
so,
that where
yeah,
he's from? And so he's been doing it for the last how many years has he been directing? And did you do all the ones with him?
I've done all of his. I did two with John Moore, and I got to do one with Bill Webb in 2014. So I think Matt's done eight. I think this is his ninth, and this is my 12th. That's a
Wow.
whole.
Now, when you were that guy in that truck working, sitting with another guy working side by side and just learning, did you ever think that like it's sometimes it is great not to think about where you were going to go, where you can go. I mean, you want to dream big, but now that you've established the milestones in the career, because everybody has that, you want to work those big shows and get to that. And all of a sudden, then you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get a chance to do it again. And then, I'm like, and then you're doing more of them. And then, so like, what's it like to be a part of these amazing moments that you see? Like, you've been a part of a game. That first World Series that you did for Fox ended up being a game seven, right?
It did. It was game seven. Madison Bumgarner came back, and I think he closed out the game last three innings. The thing I remember most about this postseason was the LCS. It was may have been St. Louis, San Francisco. So we do the first game, and it's the first big game that I've ever done. Like there's twice as much as I've ever tried to put on air before. And we get through the first game, and I didn't make any mistakes on air, and I was so happy. And like I'm patting myself on the back. And then the second game, I had so many sources in the switcher that I had to like shift a bunch of stuff. Like tape machines were in a different place, and I had stuff all over the place. Uh, and I didn't realize that I had hidden my tape machines before I went to my first replay. And so called up the replay move, and I ran it, and I went to punch Y, which does tight center. And I punched the button where it should have been, and it wasn't there. Is the booth snoop. And so my first replay of the second game was right to the booth snoop. And the camera must have been like 4 inches away from Joe Buck's face. And he
Oh,
looked at the monitor, and then he looked at the camera, and he said, "Hello, America." And after he finished saying it, I dissolved to the tape machine, and it was so bad that Webb didn't say anything. Like if you made one small mistake, Webb would kill you. And this was so bad, I could hear him thinking like, what have I done bringing this kid up here? Like this is not going well. And the thing I felt best about all of it was that I didn't make any more mistakes on air the rest of that game. Like I got through that one mistake and just kept going and got it all back together and made it through the rest of the show. But I could hear that I was very quickly getting pushed out the door if I didn't get it back together.
well, I worked a lot with Bill Webb in my career, and he was tough, really, really tough guy to work for. But the one thing about him, what made it tough, why he was tough, because I think he saw your potential, and when he wanted to push you to reach that potential, and I think even though you made a mistake, he knew it wasn't really, one. So he gave you that, and so I think not ripping your head off in that moment was probably his way of patting you on the back in a weird way, saying, "Hey, I know you stumbled, but I've seen you run before, so don't worry about it."
I think if it had been game one, it would have been worse. But I think because I had already made it through at least one game, maybe he was thinking, we'll see what happens here.
Well, did you have? I mean, I don't know. Like, were you really worried? Like, I mean, because you were booked for the whole thing. You think that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. Webby could have done anything. They
Well,
are in that world, but
No, I mean, probably being a little dramatic, but you do worry about that as a freelancer. I think my dad always would try to instill this in me, like one mistake, everybody makes a mistake. Like it happens. Don't let one mistake become two mistakes, become three mistakes. Don't make a mistake and then think, oh, I got to be a hero and I got to save everything now and I got to get back to one mistake. Like it happens to all of us. And when it finds you, it sucks. But when it's your turn, you wear it and then you move on.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes with a lot of the you know, any broadcast, you're going to have those kind of issues happen and affect you along the way. So, we're talking about web and the other, what was it? Do you have a lot of contact with the director before the show, before emails, calls? What what are your? I mean, I know what our meetings are like, but do you have? Are you involved in a lot of meetings with the director before shows?
Hopefully not. I mean, I don't want to be a part of any of those. Like, we'll talk about a couple things. If there's anything new or he wants to try something different, like at Yankees, because of where Low first was, he felt like he was going to have to score a lot of runners off the robo. So before the show, he mentioned that to me. He was like, I may be scoring runners off of 25. So just fair warning that might happen tonight. And it did a bunch of times. So I mean, it's at
So
this point,
wait, does he tell you that for so that you change placement for his monitor wall, or so that you know that you might need to punch to have that a camera that's not normally where it would for that normal sequence would be a different place to punch?
right? You don't want to have like a red flag go off and be like, why would he be taking 25? And then you're slow or you're like double checking him more. Just, I mean, physically, camera 25 is at the other end of the switcher. So if I'm living over at the low numbers and all of a sudden he's trying to cut in 25, now I got to hop up there. I think it was just fair warning. Like, I'm going to try this tonight. I don't normally do it. Now you know.
So who's your director for the Stanley Cup stuff that you're doing?
They've had a couple. They had one guy, he was from Canada. He was not particularly good, even though he was from Canada. So we made it through one Stanley Cup final and they moved on from him. And then they went to a staff guy. TNT does it really odd. I had a different director every round of the playoffs this last year, and it wasn't like, oh, Paul, you're going to be with Matt and you'll be with Matt through the whole thing. It was for the cup finals, it was a different director than the conference finals. And then during the first two rounds, it was all over the place. I worked with a bunch of different guys.
So it's kind of it's I mean you kind of want to be paired with somebody because you get used to work with somebody and you get used to their cadence and how they call the show, whatever like that. But if you're booked to dance, you got to dance with who's booking you, right? So like, do you find it difficult to get used to a new director, or do you find it, do you pick up on directors if you're working with a new director for the first time? Is it hard to get their cadence? Do they make sure they call things a certain way? Are there certain ways you want them to say that? Because basically, sometimes the sequences are complicated but you got to build all that to happen quickly.
You do. I mean, nobody's that terribly different. It's not like you got some guy speaking a different language and you got to try to figure it out. I tend to take directors more at their word the less I've worked with them, just because you don't know their nuances. After you've worked with a guy a few times, you kind of pick up on certain things, almost like tells. Like with Matt, I know when he's gonna request like a split screen or a two box or something, because he'll start phrasing it differently. He'll go like, can I get and you know a split screen's coming. So it's little things you pick up on early on. You just, okay, you're gonna say it and I'm just gonna do it and I'll figure it out. And then we can get into like a little more nuanced discussion about how the show goes. But the first few times I just got to experience it.
Now, like when I look at the sports broadcasts that we've seen in the last decade, even probably, but the biggest thing that I think has changed is super slow mo. Now we're seeing ridiculous amounts of super slow mo, 8 times XMOs, thousands of frame, all these specialty cameras, which is great. I mean, I love all these different looks and I love how we're doing it. We see a lot of the cinema stuff, the the shallow depth of field. You know, a lot of this is a lot of different technology changes that are happening or impacting. What are the impacts that you think that are added to a broadcast or added to the shows that are working or not working or worthwhile or coming down or changing for us?
I think they're all just toys. I mean, I think by and large, for the most part, on the sports side, you're just trying to worry about nuts and bolts. You got to get the game camera on the air. You got to get the beautiful high frame rate cameras on the air. The rest of it, and sometimes I feel like it's a distraction. And I feel like some directors get caught up in it in a way that's not helpful to the rest of the show. Some of them know how to manage it, and it's not an all the time thing, and it's a special thing. It's almost like a garnish in the main dish. The steak is going to be your coverage of the event. The ones that get caught up in the rest of it feels like kind of doing a disservice to the people at home, because I think by and large people tune in because they want to watch the sport that they're tuning into, not that they want to see, oh, this cool lens that we got, that shallow depth of field, and look at how out of focus the background is. Like, I want to see
I
the pitch. I want to see
I
the touchdown.
Yeah, I know. I've always felt like, like that you're right. These are all toys or tools or things that we have at our disposal to use. And as an artist, it's at your disposal whether or not you're going to use whatever color palette you're going to use whenever you're paint. You got to choose. And I've always felt like the real baseline for anything is like what, our job. We're storytellers. I mean, that's what. So if what do using this or that or whatever you want to add, if that enhances the story or helps us tell the story better, then I'm all for it. That's what it has to. That's why I feel like, and those things can't be over. Like, I mean, the thing that I think has been well, not, I don't know, I don't want to say overused, but it's definitely gone to extremes now. Are some of these 3D graphics that you see that animate on and now you have the Skycam has to like do a move to accommodate a giant graphic, and he's seeing it on another, so I don't know, does that add to anything? But I mean, sometimes you're putting up information and wanting to show that information in a better way, like so.
Yeah, I mean it's a more interesting way of giving that information. I mean, I've seen the 3D graphic that you're talking about, and it might be the score of the game. And now the sky cam's flying through it, and it's a really cool shot. And there are directors who can handle that, and there are directors who can make that interesting and worthwhile. And sometimes directors just get overwhelmed, and they've got people above them saying, like, we got to get the 3D rendered graphics from the Skycam in. And they're just forcing it in, and they're investing a lot of time and energy.
And sometimes some money too. I guess there's always like like, well, you bring up a good point because like you're a front row guy. So let's just be clear about certain things, places like in that truck, you sit in the front row next to the director and the producer. So that's, a pretty busy front row. You hear a lot of traffic there, right? So director's talking to you, producer's talking to him, and then the producers talking to the tape room, there's a lot of traffic going in and out, and then your graphics people on the back. There's a lot of people can get it gets a little excited, let's just say, during some live shows. How do you kind of filter all that out when things are going good or bad? Because I've seen the excitement level rise in a truck, whether or not it's good things are going or bad. So
I mean, I think that was one of the things that was hardest for me to learn, because at first you're not sure what's going on, who you're supposed to be listening to, and how it's going to affect your job. Uh, and it that first year was, I think that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn, was who to listen to and who not to listen to, who is being helpful, who's not, and what's actually important in those moments. I'll cheat a little bit and listen to the producer so I know what's coming. That's important. Graphics throw stuff out. I don't need to listen to them. I don't need to know what they're about to do. If it's a graphic, I'll put it in. If it's not a graphic, I won't put it in. Like, the hard part is filtering out all of that stuff so that you hear the important things and you can act on it. If you know what's coming a little bit early, you can get ahead of it and you can be ready for it. You lean too far to one side, you're going to fall off the other side.
you see, that's why I've always felt like I said, I've always looked at other jobs in this, like I'm a camera guy and I'm happy to be a camera guy, but I've always looked and admired some of the other positions. And your position as a TD, I was like, man, that's not, because one of the things that I felt was very, very difficult to for your position isn't like learning the switcher. And I mean, I think I'm smart enough to figure out how to push some buttons and do all the other stuff technically with the right training and working with the right mentor and with somebody with obviously patience, because it would probably take me just as long and to figure it out. But I'm sometimes I don't know, like I don't want to scare people from worrying about like learning about that part of it. But I think understanding that it's not just learning about that part of it, that it's about having the communications, having to know how to filter out miscommunication that's not going to do all that stuff, how to make that workflow work when things aren't always working in that way. I mean, I think there's a lot there that it isn't just about, you know, the technical part of it. You know what I mean? There's a part of managing that collaboration, that communication, all of that in order to make it work, and not to make you crazy and stressful.
We always talk about the tech book being the book of lives. Like you're going to get a bunch of information from people. The only universal rule is whenever a director says we're not going to use this, that means we are going to use that. Like I was working with an AD a couple days ago. I think it was yesterday, and we got a bunch of different promos based on what happened on the baseball games before us. You know, if the right team wins, that series is over. We need to run these promos. If X happens, we're going to do Y. And he told me, all right, go ahead and get rid of promo B. And I go, okay. And then I get rid of promo B. And he goes, can you run promo B for me? And I go, the thing you just told me to get rid of? Yeah. Can you run it again for me? Sure. Because they're going to say these things. They're going to lie to you. They're not going to mean to lie to you. They have the best intentions in the world. Hey, I don't want you to worry about this thing because we're not going to do it. Okay, so we are going to do it. And you have to cover all your bases, and you work with the people enough and you go, they're going to say that, but that's not the way it's going to go.
So, all right. So you had the first Fox wasn't involved in the first round. So are you paying attention to where you're going yet? Do you know where you're going to end up?
Yeah, they told us we're starting in Toronto because it was going to be Toronto or New York or Boston. So we knew we were going to start in Toronto, go to Toronto. You pay attention because not all cities are the same. I don't want to go to the West Coast. I hope LA gets knocked out. No offense to anybody. I hope Seattle gets knocked out. Again, no offense. But at some point, it becomes not about which team's going to be in, but which city's going to be in. What are the hotels like there? How far are the hotels away from the stadium? You know, am I going to be staying in Flushing and having to work up in the Bronx? That's not great. That's not ideal. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, what do you
So
mean? People forget about the glamour. Like I've always tried to explain that to people. It's usually not the work. Like I expect the work to be tough and challenging because that's what it is. It's the other stuff that travel can make it everything so much harder for you, and then you could add like, well, you don't have the other added issue of well, it does affect you in some ways, but the conditions, like, you don't work in the conditions. I end up as a camera guy working in some of these not so pleasant conditions of games, but obviously baseball won't get played in those, but football does. And not all the other ones we do, but it does impact because sometimes definitely affects facts and logistics and everything else. But let me ask you, what advice would you give an aspiring person who wants to follow a path and to become a technical director? Where do they start now? Do they start with a class, looking online? Which switcher is the one that you think is the most prevalent to see, or what to become more familiar with to learn?
Grass Valley is universally used for switchers in the US for sports production. Ross is kind of on the come up, but I don't know Ross switchers at all. Uh, so if you wanted to work in sports, I would say learn grass. And I would say the number one thing that you have to do that I think all of us have done is find a mentor, because learning from somebody who's been through it is going to speed up the process of getting to where you want to go. And then having somebody that you can ask questions of, when you're stuck or, after an event, contact them and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what I did. And this is how it got messed up. What should I have done, or what should I have done in this situation?
Now, let me ask you another question because I know some of like in my market in New York, the local guys, the video guys who work in the same venue all the time, share a lot of their notes to make sure like that when you're covering me on the V1 as a home show that you know how the patches show and that way, we share a lot of notes for some of that stuff. Do you share any kind of notes or do you talk to other TDs and ask questions about, hey, how do you guys do when you have to do this, that, or that, or find because obviously the way the tools that you have work, any of these switchers work, you have multiple different ways of doing the same thing with all the, because you have all the ways to do it, right? MEs and everything else.
You do. And we talked. The hard part is camera guy shows up for a show. There are a few other camera guys on the show. So they get to know a lot of different camera guys. Same with tape, maybe not graphics. There's always a few audio guys. I rarely ever see another TD. If I see another TD, something's gone terribly wrong. So when you finally do get to meet them in person, you spend time with them. Like for postseason, we've added a technical director position because the show has gotten so large that I'm going to start needing help getting all the sources to air. So we're going to have a sub switch this year. It's Ross Flagg. He's done 24 NBA finals, incredible TD. So I'm looking forward to having 3 weeks that I get to spend time with him and ask him questions and try to figure stuff out. Because everybody does have a different perspective. I've looked at his show before. I've tried to operate his show before. I would have no chance getting anything to air the way he does it, but it works incredibly well for him. And I think vice versa, if he were asked to sit down in front of my switcher and try to make it work, I think he would be lost because you figure out solutions and this solution will affect the next solution, will affect the next solution. And if you do this way, that means you can't do this other thing a different way. Like they all affect each other. And I think getting back to the point about finding a mentor, because I had good mentors, I do feel like it is my responsibility to try to be a good mentor to anybody else who is interested in trying to learn this position and is willing to put in time and energy. So there are a few TDs at MLB Net. The guy who I spent only a little bit of time with, Joya, who's now doing Monday Night Football. But when I got to meet him in person a couple times, we talked about stuff. When you have the chance to teach, if somebody is willing to learn, I think you have to remember that somebody taught you, somebody spent time with you. It's your responsibility to pass that on.
That's always great. I love that because I always feel like it is a good way to pay it forward. But I didn't realize, the way you said that, I didn't realize that. Like, yeah, I show up and there's a bunch of camera guys, there's always a bunch of tape guys, but you're right. You're always kind of the one solo guy on the show. You don't cross paths often enough. Like sometimes we'd see guys in bigger shows because there'd be a pregame show TD with the regular game TDs, and sometimes you. But it's interesting that you guys you were gonna be you're excited to share because you want to pick each other's brains, see how he does things. And when you watch another show or see another show, do you kind of see how they do it? How do you pick up on stuff? Can you watch a show and see stuff that you can pick up on or question yourself? I wonder how they made that happen.
A few times, absolutely. I remember I watched Mark Herklotz, who did Monday Night Football for ESPN for years, and I watched how I would watch Monday Night Football and I would try to figure out what he was doing because he was doing these complicated squeeze back moves. And like I was watching it, I was watching it, I was watching it to the point where I had like TiVo and I was going back frame by frame to see what was happening and just jogging forward and backward to try to figure out how he was getting to these different things so quickly. And then I got a chance to meet him and I was like, hey, I've been watching this. You tell me, is this how you did it? And be like, yeah, that is how he did it. I'm like, yeah, I figured it out.
Oh,
So
isn't
yeah,
that great? You traced it back and you were like, you thought about it and then you got a chance to fact check yourself and you were
that was
right.
so
That's
cool.
great,
Yeah,
bro. Little
yeah,
star.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think again, if you want to learn, you're gonna figure out a way to learn. And at time, the best tool I had was, I'm gonna sit down and watch. And now that I'm doing football, because I'm a football guy now, uh, the lead TD for Fox's football, Colby, does this weekly call and he gets all the TDs from the NFL and college on. And for like a half an hour, like everybody talks about, oh, I had this problem, have you guys run into this before? This is how I'm trying to do this. And I've never experienced that before. And I tried to get on the call yesterday, even though I'm not doing football right now, but it was right in the middle of our facts for baseball. And I was really bummed out because you get to hear all these really intelligent TDs talking about things, and you're like, yeah, I have that same problem.
I'm gonna tell you something. That sounds like a future episode for my crew call live. Bring a
Yeah,
bunch of guys on that. I'd love to just. I would be a fly on the wall for that, man. I would just like let
cool.
you guys go and just try to figure it out. Just I would just listen to you guys talk and be like, what the heck are these ME? What to what the X to? How do you do that? The key point, down DS downstream. All the like. I love hearing TD's talk. That TD talk is like another language to me. But I do love that you were watching stuff because that's what I sometimes do too. Because I was like, I've always like I said, I respect your chair a lot, but the chair next to you was the chair that I was like, if I'm ever going to try to do something, I would have liked to maybe direct, not sports, but maybe sport. I'm a music guy. I've done a lot of music concerts in my career too. So music had been the one I would have liked to have an opportunity to direct, and I would have liked. But sometimes when I'm watching sports or even when I'm watching music, I try to when I see the cuts, he talk, say them, say, say what the director was saying as I see the cuts, right? Especially in football, like when I know the cameras, because he'll be, when I know he's cutting to the quarterback camera, I go, okay, take five. So I try to cut as he was follow the conversation as the cut is going to see if I can figure it out because that's the hard part for a director and for the TD too. And I think for anybody who wants to work in that field, or meaning that I feel in the truck, because you have the director is the one probably mainly talking. But when he says something like roll Z, track Z, take, he's talking to three different people, and like roll Z means for the tape guy to, play the thing. Track Z is for the audio guy to, bring up the sound on it. And take Z is for you to make sure that everybody sees it, put it on the air, right? So it's like you got to filter when he's saying stuff, you have to listen to what's pertinent to your thing to do what you got to do and not listen to what he's saying to the other people.
I mean, sometimes you get a lot of context and clues from what he's saying to other people because directors are human too. And there are lots of times they say completely the wrong thing and then get confused when something terrible happens. So sometimes you kind of figure out like, oh, wait, he's saying this, but no, I because of what he's been telling everybody else, I know he means this.
Oh, so you saying sometimes you find yourself in a position where you have to like do what I say, do what I mean, not what I say, because he meant that, but because he could be in the flux of what he's doing. And is that do you get a little do you get a little tap from the director like thanks, or do you get a little recognition? Because that's to me that's a save, right? You saved them from making a miscut or a bad cut, right?
Absolutely. I try to think of TDing like hockey with the plus minus system. Like if I make a mistake, that's a minus for me. But if I fix somebody else's mistake before it goes to air, that's a plus for me. And then you don't have to be perfect because we'll all make mistakes. But if you are a net positive for the show, that's all you can really hope for at the end of the day.
That's a great way to think about that. I like that the plus minus. I like that a lot. So it helps keep you motivated to keep your pluses going, but it also helps you want to be motivated, like I said, to what we said in the beginning, help the guy next to you because that also could be a plus on your side too. What is
And
it? So let's talk a little bit about we've talked a lot about the work and we hinted a little about travel. So you did have some really cool experiences with travel. Obviously, you're going to Canada, but that's not the furthest you've gone. Where else did you go? What was that like? Where were some of the other crazy places or trips that you remember going to that were memorable experiences in your career?
I guess the most foreign one was in 22. I went to Qatar for the World Cup, and it was I mean you have to go to a government building to get a permit to buy alcohol. You have to go to a government building to get a permit just to buy pork. So it's I mean it's
Are they close? Are the buildings close by?
that's probably the same building, but it's the same idea that if you're doing something that's goes against the Muslim religion, you have to get permission to do it, and they have to make sure that you that you aren't breaking the laws of their religion. So that was interesting. It was so hot. It was so different. But it was cool. And then I did get to go to Australia. I went to Sydney for 5 or 6 weeks to do the Women's World Cup studio show down there, and that's probably the favorite trip that I've ever been on. It was awesome. I loved it. If I could move there, I would move there in a heartbeat.
It's funny. Where in Australia was that?
Sydney.
So, and how long of a trip was that one?
It was, I think it was 6 weeks.
Wow.
It was a
And
big set. Yeah.
did you extend after to do a little trip on your own, or did you have time in between to sneak away to do anything else? Did you want to do anything else, or were you just spend?
My family came down for the last 3 weeks. And it's great because the way that soccer works out is you have 2 days on, 2 days off. So if you get through the first half is every day, all day. If you can get through that, once they eliminate half the teams, it's, 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off. So the last 3 weeks, I probably had 10 or 11 days off with my family. So we thought about trying to go somewhere. I mean, New Zealand is further away from Australia than you would guess. I mean, it was like a 6 or 7 hour flight to get to New Zealand, so it wasn't worth it to try to do that in a day. We thought about going to Perth, but in the end, it was great to just kind of travel around Sydney. My son and I went surfing a bunch of times. We went snorkeling. It was awesome.
Well, all right. Now is the time I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and I happen to see a guy who jumped on the call is a Matthew. If you're there, Matthew G, I'm going to ask you to unmute because he happens to be a camera guy from Australia
Oh,
that I met. He happened to fly in the other day, goes to the Yankee games, talks to some of the guys at the Yankee game. They put him in touch with me, and I got him to come see. I work at ABC. I do the View during the week, and he came to see the View and checked out our brand new state of the art facility. We have a brand new state of the art studio with like a LED floor wall, like the Fuse technology. It's phenomenal. So I'm going to give him the first question. Matthew, go ahead from Australia.
Hey Hardy, how are you, mate? And yeah, I appreciate that the other day as well. Incredible studios, and it was an awesome experience.
Well,
Just
I'm glad. What's your question? Go for it. Go ahead.
yeah, sorry, did I just overhear? Were you at the Women's World Cup, Paul?
I was, yeah.
I was working on that tournament the whole time in Sydney. That's
Oh,
insane.
were you working
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
FIFA?
Just a question. When you're TDing, what do you look out for? Like what separates the good cameraman from the bad cameraman? Or not so much bad cameraman, but let's just say what stands out from like a good operator to you.
That's a good question.
As a technical director, I mean, are you judging like, and are you sharing that opinion with the director and be like, oh, this guy might be screwing you a little bit, or no?
No, I mean, I don't often think camera guys are trying to screw a director, or if they are, I'm completely unaware of it. The You can tell the good ones uh, by watching them, obviously. You can tell the good ones from the bad ones. You watch them long enough, you know who's just repeating the same shot over and over and over again. You know who's creatively coming up with different things. I always kind of think like in a football game, trying to find one guy on the sideline will show you who is a good camera operator, because it's not just about searching through a sea of numbers to find somebody. If you take it systematically and you break it down by different numbers and position groups, and the smart ones will figure out, the defense is over here, the offense is over here, the quarterbacks are sitting over there, these guys are grouping together. It's not that they're just frantically searching the sideline. It's, you see them go to a group, and then you see them refine that, and then you see it refine it a little bit more. There's a process to it. There's some logic to it, and that extends. That one act will be the way they treat everything. It's how they treat their assignments. It's how they approach being a camera operator. Is very systematically, and then during the show, you watch them. They will be where they're supposed to be, shooting what they're supposed to be seeing, and they will get the really interesting shots. It's not just, oh, there's the ball. Oh, there's home plate. Oh, there's the guy scoring. They'll be building relationships into shots. They'll be showing you multiple things simultaneously and then widening and narrowing that gaze when appropriate.
Yeah, I always when I was getting taught, I was always told to always listen to commentary because that's the best way you can offer up more shots with the director. Because a lot of guys aren't, even though they'd be listening to commentary, then it goes with what you were saying at first, your quick reactions to tell the story as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's always important. Listening to what the announcers are saying. I like how you say the commentary, like my favorite is what you guys call the field, the pitch. So like I love all that, So, but but it's similar. It's similar workflows, right? We're like the storytellers. The announcers are kind of the ones that are voicing the story, and we're the ones providing the pictures to go along with it.
Yeah, we were we someone put it the other day to me. It was like we are the announcers paintbrush to like their canvas.
That's great. What, Matt? You have any more questions?
Not for now. Not
All
for
right,
now.
great. So if anybody else has a question, just raise your hand and I'll be happy to let you join and ask your questions. Paul, let me ask you some more questions about work and travel or whatever. So the World Series, uh, you'll be up in Canada. Is do you know what truck will you have? You'll have what you have. Was it Webby? Will you have a Game Creek truck?
We were just on Webby. Up here, we are on NEP. Fox splits up the contract, half Game Creek, half NEP. So Canada now we're on ND1, which used to be the Sunday Night Football truck. Now we get it for the month. We'll go to Game Creek, Yogi for the second city, if that's Detroit or Seattle.
Oh, so you already kind of know and will both those trucks have the same switchers and complement that you'll be used to? Like, so with those two trucks, so you'll be faxing two different trucks the whole way through, kind of. So you'll have two separate sheets of your paperwork to juggle as you go from city to city to fax each show.
Two sets of paperwork, and then depending, when we get to the World Series, what city that is in, what camera complement we'll have. I always told Fox that if they could make both cities identical for equipment, it would make everybody's job a lot easier. But not only do they not do that, they put us on two completely different, mobile unit companies.
Yeah, obviously logistically that is not the ideal way to do it. Obviously, keeping everything the same would be ideal, and or make it, well, I mean, it's the way things are done. I mean, obviously, it's part of it is the part of the logistics of stuff. It's a busy time of year. You got football, college football. You got a lot of stuff happening. You got the issues internationally. I mean, I'm sure it's not easy dealing with the border issues of having to go to Canada now than possibly having to come back and forth all the time for work there, right? You're
I
there
mean,
now?
we're here now. Yeah, I can actually see Rogers Center. It's right over there. It Canada's not bad. And it's not that far. I mean, if we get the West Coast out, then, Milwaukee, I think, would be the furthest west we have to go, and Philadelphia might be the furthest south. So, I mean, just narrowing it down geographically makes it a lot easier.
Are there any? So you're gonna do the World Series. What's your next calendar event after? Well, you'll go to what? You'll go to hockey or basketball? Are you on a Turner
I'll go back
package?
to I'll go back to football. I'll do football, then some NBA.
And football, who are you with for football?
Matt Gangle again is directing. Fran Morrison's producing. It's for
Oh, you
Fox.
got Fran. I love Franny. He's a character too. As a producer, I mean, I used to work with. He used to be my producer when I was on the Fox Beach show. So I did many years with him. He's great. He's a lot of fun to work with. I'm sure you guys. I'm sure there's a lot of fun story with him on the road. Who's your talent team?
Kenny Albert, who's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
and Jonathan Vilma.
yeah, I love Kenny. I'm so happy that Kenny is now going to be taking over the Rangers broadcast for that. He was their radio guy forever.
Mhm.
He was our talent when I was on the Fox that show B
Yeah.
show with them. He's great. It is nice when you're on a crew on a regular basis and you work together and you have good people that that work with you and are always open to, being, it's just nice to be working with nice people, and you work with a good group of people, and that's a key factor that sometimes is sometimes overlooked, that working with, because let's face it, in this industry, now I'm not saying that they're not great people out there, but there are a select few. Sometimes you have to also work with some people that you might not always like, but you still have to get the job done and work with those people. So it just takes a lot to manage as well. Let me ask you about, would you, since you are a legacy guy, you how old are your kids right now? Do you have ones that are thinking about trying to? Are you concerned? Like you said, your dad was uh, not really too conducive about wanting. I mean, I think what it is, I know it as, for me, as a camera guy, my son wants to work in the music business, equally difficult industry to get into. I just think, my kids have had a view of how hard I work. And I think what is difficult to express to them is that the one regret that I do probably have is the time factor. Our jobs are not these, you know, uh, 9 to 5 jobs. It's, sports is, nights, weekends, and holidays, and you travel a lot. You're not home a lot. So there is another sacrifice. Is it for a fulfilling career? Absolutely. You know what I mean? But there's a bit of a trade-off and a trade-in. So what would you tell your kids? Do you have them? Let's start with that. And what would you tell, if you don't, your future kids about this industry?
Oh, I do have a 15-year-old and a soon to be 13-year-old.
Well, a little early to be, uh, into career goals. Yeah, I mean, I always, even when my kids were teenagers and going picking colleges, they were like, I don't know what I want to do yet, Dad. I don't know what I want to do. I go, that's totally okay. I don't, even if you asked me when I was 18 what I wanted to do, whatever I told you was a lie. It would have been a lie anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I always try to tell them, like, at that age, just don't close any doors. Like, don't put yourself in a position where you're unable to do something because you closed a door too early. So keep all your doors open, be able to pivot if you want to, try a bunch of things, figure out what you want. What I would tell them about this industry, I mean, you take the good with the bad. There are all sorts of industries where there are huge time demands, and I mean, when I'm at home, I get to be at home. There's not a lot that I have to do for this job when I'm not here. Like, I just can't. Like, I can plan some things and I can work on paperwork, but for the most part, I don't worry about it until I actually go to work. So yeah, it sucks not being at home Friday nights, Saturday nights. I do miss football games and soccer games. When I'm at home, I go to as many as I can. And there are lots of times when I get to be at home during the day. When they were really little, during the week, I would be at home, and there's no better time to go somewhere like the zoo or a place on a weekday during the day because they're empty. You can do whatever you want, and you're not dealing with all the huge crowds on the weekends. So I kind of think you just got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, you find your way to find your quality time if you can't have a quality of time, and you make your trade-offs. I remember when I was doing football and I was traveling on the weekends, and I was, gone Friday, and sometimes even gone a little earlier if I had to do E&Gs. I wouldn't have that much time at home, but I would make sure that when I was home early or whatever, I'd be the one picking up my kids from school all the time. And my wife would sometimes talk to some of the other wives, and they'd be like, "Did your husband, is your husband retired or something? He's always picking the kids up." They were like, "Cause no other, every other father is probably working 9 to 5 hours and never there at 2 o'clock, 2:30 to pick up the kids from school." And I was there all the time. Like all the moms were like, like I was like the dad mom for a while, Mister. But I was like, no, I work.
I mean, some of that stuff ends up driving my wife crazy because she has to do it all the time. And when I'm at home, I love going to pick them up or drop them off for school. She's like, "Oh, the soccer game's like 45 minutes away." And I'm like, "I don't care, get in the car, let's go." Like, this is 45 minutes that I'll get to spend with him that I would not otherwise get to. And so it just kind of becomes these awesome moments that you really start to appreciate, because you're like, this is the only time I might get to see her play soccer this month. So yeah, I'm gonna go and it's gonna be awesome.
All right, so let's end this with coming back to where we started. You told me that your dad said if you are going to get into this business, you should get into the TDs, because the TD is where the growth industry is, and where people, they're always going to need TDs to do this job. So I'm going to ask you, what are you going to tell this next generation? Where is the growth job now? Is it a TD? Is it graphics? Is it video? Is it EVS? Where is that growth position? You think where is that position's biggest opportunity for that generation now?
I think based on my experience and knowing that a lot of my success came because I was going to do a job that not a lot of other people wanted to do, is try to do the scary job. Like do the job that everybody else is afraid of, do the job that other people think might be too hard or too demanding. Like your safety and your longevity is going to come if you are willing to do the things that other people find difficult.
And be resilient at it, right? Don't quit.
Be resilient.
Yeah. I've always told people too, like, especially when it comes to, job searching, a lot of people, I tell my kids, you got to be persistent. You know what I mean? Even, you know, don't take one no for an answer. You gotta, it's like the baseball, 3 strikes you're out. You gotta tell me no 3 times before I walk away. I want to be persistent. For me, if I was putting out a job interview or doing anything for a job, I would tell everybody no. I would see who wants it bad enough to reapply. I'm looking for I would be looking for that person who's not giving up on the first try. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I say persistence will always overcome resistance. So if you can be persistent in where you're going to go, don't be afraid of failure. We talked about it. You had plenty of failure along your path. I've had plenty of failure along mine, but once you get comfortable with a little failure, you can end up finding yourself around a lot of success, which is great.
I think so. And all jobs are like this. Like there's a lot to learn. And the technical side is only half of it. Figuring out people, figuring out systems will carry you a long way. And that takes a lot of time and energy, and it takes a lot of failure. Yeah, I agree.
Well, Paul, thanks so much for doing this, man. I don't want to take too much of your time. There's another game on. It's happened to be the Giants. Might want to watch them. I don't think they're going to win, but we'll see what happens, man. I appreciate you doing this, man. I'm going to try to do these more often with other people. And I love that you shared so much great knowledge about your career, your path. And thanks again for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Great, man. Thanks. All right, everybody. Next week, Crew Call Live. Next guest, I don't know, yet to be determined. I have a few people on the way, but we'll see who we can get. Will we still be talking baseball? Will we be talking football? I don't know. It depends. I mean, I'm trying to find different people in different positions, different areas, different places. So you grew up in Kansas City. Where's home for you now, Paul?
I live in North Carolina.
Oh, no. What part of North Carolina? I
Chapel Hill.
Oh, okay. Is that part of that? What do they call that? The pharmaceutical triangle there? Raleigh,
yeah.
Raleigh. Yeah, is
Raleigh from Chapel Hill. Yep.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area there. My family goes down to the Outer Banks for a little while, and I've always loved that area, and I've always liked there's a place in Wilmington I wanted to check out too. Well,
Wilmington's nice. Yeah, we go down there a few times a year.
Yeah, well, I'm this is crazy for me, but my dad, when my parents were divorced when I was 3, he ended up moving to down to Miami, but he lives on a houseboat. But it wasn't like, it was more house than boat, like a little kind of housey thing. He was a single guy, recently divorced with a kid, so he wasn't probably living in a lap of luxury, but it was a cool way. But Wilmington has some really kind of cool houseboat communities down there that I had checked out. So I don't know, maybe I'm on vacation down there or whatever. I don't know how the wife is on that, but we'll see. All right. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Take care, everybody. That was Crew Call Live this week. Hope you go around next week, next Thursday, 7 p.m.